Okay, guys, now for the final phase, we're really going to blend in the colors and the tones and the values to make it look as realistic as possible. Now, we know that it's never going to really look super realistic because we know these people and we know that this head doesn't fit on that body. So, psychologically, we're going to be looking at these things through those eyes. But we're trying to do the best we can to maybe fool some people that don't know who these people are. Let's just assume that there are people out there that don't know who The Rock is. Anyway, what we want to do is we want to now create several adjustment layers, okay? And so this, having done this for years, this is the pattern that I typically use to make these adjustments. Number one, you have to look at and objectively try to understand the differences in color of the skin, the differences in lights and darks, remember, or values of the skin, and then go in and try to make those adjustments using several different adjustment layers. Now, when I'm looking at this in general, I'm comparing Mr. Eccles' skin to the skin of The Rock on the chest. To me, Eccles' face looks like it's more red than The Rock. The Rock is a little bit more yellow, okay? So just keep that in mind. Also, the darkest darks on The Rock seem to be a little bit darker than the darkest darks on Mr. Eccles' face. So we have to make those adjustments as well. And finally, we have an issue where I think Mr. Eccles just has too much vibrance, too much color in him. If we just took a little bit of that color away, it could help blend it in with The Rock's neck and The Rock's body. So the first thing I'm going to do is that levels adjustment, that where we can play with lights and darks. So I'm going to select my layer, go down to this little icon here, my adjustment layer icon, and choose levels. Now always remember to right click on the new levels adjustment layer, hit clicking mask, and then we can just play with this. Sometimes I like to just go extreme and go, okay, which way is what? What do we do? I know after experience that if I change my mid-tones right here, this is my input mid-tone, and I move it towards the white, his whole face will get darker. If I move it towards the black, his whole face gets lighter. Okay, so these are, again, just going to be subtle adjustments. And I just wanted to make his face just slightly darker. Remember, because this is an adjustment layer, we could go back in later and tweak these after we've done a couple more adjustment layers. And so it's sort of an exercise in going back and forth through a bunch of adjustment layers until we get something that we think is convincing. I'm also going to make his darkest darks a little bit darker. If we go this way, we're sort of adding contrast, right? But I'm going to make his darkest darks just a little bit darker. And I'm going to leave it at that. Now, the next one I like to do is I want to take some of that saturation away. Remember I said that look, he just looks like he has too much color overall in his face compared to The Rock. So I'm going to do a hue saturation adjustment. Again, we have to use our clipping mask. And I'm going to go ahead and take saturation down just a little bit. Not all the way down. If we go all the way down, we lose all the color. Okay, so I'm just going to take it down a little bit. Again, remember it's an adjustment layer, so I can go back later and fix that. I'm going to leave it right there for now, and then I'm going to go get the last adjustment layer, which is the color balance adjustment layer. And again, right-click to make it a clipping mask so that we're not affecting the whole image, which would be the other two layers below this adjustment layer. And I'm going to go to my range of midtones. Okay, so we're going to start in the middle now. We're not going to play with shadows, highlights. Let's just do midtones for now. And again, I think his face just looks a little bit too red. So what if I just take some of that red to the left, which would take it away? If I go extreme, well, he's going to turn a little bit blue and green. So I'm just going to take some of that red away. Right now, to be honest with you, I'm saying that looks pretty good. Pretty good right there. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave that. I'm satisfied with that. I'm satisfied that that's convincing. But I want to point out one more thing before we finish this thing off. His face is blurry compared to The Rock, especially when you look at like the hand and arm area. This is pretty clean right here. This is pretty crisp. Even though it's a smaller image and we can see some of the pixels when we zoom in a little bit, we're at 200% right now. I can tell you that it's a lot sharper than Eccles' face. So how do we solve that problem? Well, I'm actually going to make Mr. Eccles convert to smart object. We're going to turn him into a smart object. And what that will do is, unfortunately, it gets rid of our mask. So you need to make sure you had your mask adjustments done by now. We could always add another mask later, but before we do this last step, make sure your mask is good. And because I've made this a smart object, I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And what this does is it creates a smart filter. Unsharp Mask gives you a few sliders that helps you control the sharpness if you're trying to sharpen an image, which means increase contrast a little bit, right? Obviously, the default of 142% is super high. If you just play with these sliders a little bit, you'll start to learn what they mean. I'm just going to take this amount way down. I'll bump the threshold really down low because this is a smaller image to 3. And if I click Preview, Off, and On, you can see just a subtle sharpening of his features. And I believe strongly that that's helping blend him in. And again, I'm going to zoom out with the rock. I think that looks pretty good. If I didn't like the sharpness on that filter, I can double click on Smart Filters again. Double click on Unsharp Mask again, and I can play with those sliders to get it to where I want it to be. All right, last thing. Because I scaled my background down, we have to get rid of this transparency back here. So the fastest way to do that is I'm just going to get my Move tool, and I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to click in Background. That will select all the pixels in my background, and now I'm going to go to Image Crop. And I want to save this PSD file out. File, Save as PSD. JStaff, I'm going to save that as Staff 02. In case I ever have to go back and fix something. Deselect. Now I'm going to right click, flatten my image, and go to File, Export as JPEG. So I want you guys to submit JPEGs for this one. I would click Save right here with my quality up, but I don't want to do that just yet. Okay. And that's it for that project. I don't know why I have a line down here. I'd probably go in and crop that out with my crop tool later. In fact, I couldn't even do this if I really wanted to, and then go out and save again. But please submit a JPEG. I'm going to do another example with another teacher and another body just to give people another example to look at if they're having difficulties. So that's it.